Welcome to this edition of Platform. I am Muhammad Kudu Abubakar. 26th of June every year is observed by member countries of the United Nations as the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, as an expression of determination to strengthen action and cooperation to achieve the goal of an international society free of drug abuse. The theme for 2020 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is tagged Better Knowledge for Better Care. This is aimed at emphasizing the need to improve the understanding of the world drug problem and how better knowledge will foster greater international cooperation for countering its impact on health, governance, and security. Being a credible member of the United Nations, Nigeria joins the rest of the world to observe the 2020 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking through its lead agency, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA. This edition of Platform focuses on Nigeria, the challenge of drug abuse and illicit trafficking. As a paramilitary organization, the NDLEA was established by Decree No. 48, 1989, now an Act of Parliament. The NDLEA is primarily charged with the responsibility of eliminating the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking in hard drugs. As the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime publishes the annual World Drug Report, what is Nigeria's position in the 2020 global rating? And what are NDLEA's challenges in the discharge of its mandates? Our guest is Colonel Muhammad Mustafa Abdullah, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA. He's a professional security officer who was appointed by President Muhammadu Buhari January 11, 2016. Colonel Muhammad Mustafa Abdullah, Chairman, Chief Executive Officer, NDLEA, welcome to Platform.
Thank you. It's my honor, pleasure, and duty to be here.
Thank you, sir, for coming. As usual, Rabi Abdullah, head of NTA's Health Desk, is here as the panelist.
Thanks for having me.
Colonel Abdullah, thank you once again for being here. Before we go to the Nigeria's rating on the World 2020 Drug Report, give us a sense of drug abuse and illicit trafficking in drugs and narcotics in Nigeria from 2016 when you assumed office to now.
It would be better to take the whole issue in perspective. From the time that the agency was created, those were the infant stages of drug abuse and drug trafficking. Then we were supposedly only a transiting nation, with the exception of perhaps cannabis, which was tolerated and used almost freely in the country. Other hard drugs were just being introduced, usually to be transshipped and moved to other parts of the world for money. And now we have gone way ahead of transiting, where we transit, we produce, and we consume. So that gives you a sense of where we are now.
We transit, we sell, we produce, and I can say we export too.
That is transiting.
Transiting.
Yeah, so how can we now, in a simple term, and for a layman like me, if we rate this transiting, exporting, trafficking that you're talking about within the range of countries within West Africa, within continental Africa, where is Nigeria? How bad is the situation?
It depends on which aspect of it you are talking about. In transiting and trafficking, Nigeria's rating is really bad in Africa. In consumption, because we produce cannabis predominantly, which is local, we consume as much as other African countries who do produce to consume. In manufacturing, this is a new trend, essentially the production of meth or methamphetamine. NDLEA has decommissioned so far to date 14 labs, beginning from the initial ones discovered in Lagos. Nigerians went out to South America procured production experts that came here to teach Nigerians until it culminated with the discovery of what is regarded in the world as a super lab, because it has the production cycle of 3 tons of meth in Asaba. These are run by the Mexicans. The initial ones were the Bolivians. So this meth is really not really known in Nigeria. So it's actually used of the manufacturers intend they carry to the Far East, particularly China, Australia, New Zealand.
DG and DLEA, I'm interested in knowing the factors that are responsible for where we are today. For instance, we know that West Africa, is recognized as, a region or trafficking region for this for drugs, and then over time, like you rightly said, it became increasingly, it went into consumption and production. And I know that in the global drug trade, that's where the sub-region is. Coming now to Nigeria, and you can even, since it belongs to West Africa, what are those factors that made the sub-region lucrative for this, evil activity?
First of all, pertaining to Nigeria, with respect to Nigeria, I would say the ECOWAS protocol, which makes every other country accessible to the other. But then I would say the proximity of some West African countries, beginning from Mali up to like Guinea, from the hub of cocaine in South America, mostly from Sao Paulo to Cape Verde, and then distribution into the sub-region. But the cartels are well knit. They may be operating differently, but they are all in cahoots. They have a well-oiled system of distribution. It doesn't matter where they source it. They have their hoarding areas in places, and where Africa happens to be, until the good time for them to transship into other places. Most of these drugs, you realize, are very expensive. The Nigerians that do it mostly, the hard drugs, excepting cannabis, they do it for the money. Our consumption rate for heroin, cocaine is not a lot compared to cannabis. But the trafficking is the most worrisome aspect of it, and that has to do with the national image. That is why the NDLEA has a twin objective: stifle the consumption in the country and disrupt the system of transshipment.
Yeah, let's come back to the NDLEA. The primary, I mentioned in person the primary responsibilities of NDLEA: eliminating the growing, processing, manufacturing, selling, exporting, and trafficking of hard drugs.
Add one more. We're the only ones entitled in law to destroy hard drugs in Nigeria.
Yes, destruction. Well, when we say eliminating, you are destroying at the same time.
There's a difference between eliminating and destruction. Eliminating is in the process of getting to consumers. Destruction is one sanctioned by the courts.
Okay, then let's come to the specifics. Let's take eliminating, growing, and processing. How far has NDLEA gone in the discharge of that responsibility?
It's difficult to say, but all I can say as a measure, were it not for the agency, the dire situation we now are in will have been a lot more worse, going by the quantities of drugs we seize.
Okay, in view of the development, what are those dispelling policies in place to checkmate the disturbing development?
The NDLEA Act, Cap 30, 2004, is one of the most robust editions or enactments for a drug fighting outfit. I think other countries in Africa and the world over may do well to take a look at what it is. It's very empowering. The limitations we have has to do with the capacity of the staff strength of the agency from when it was incepted up to like now, barring the efforts of President Muhammad Buhari, is 5,000. 5,000 is all we have to police and do all those things that have been mentioned in the Act. you can agree that that's not a number that is made to match the task involved. That's 5,000 for 30 years.
So what is being done to close that gap? I know the deficit in human resource is, obviously, an issue here. What are those strategies, that are being deployed to address that?
Okay, there are two ways, principally, of achieving those items listed. You either go the technology way, which is very expensive and we can ill afford now, or put boots on the ground. That is the route Mr. President Muhammad had decided to go. That is why he has agreed and sanctioned the upscaling of this NLA strength to 20,000, 5,000 each year until we get to 20,000.
Beginning from which year?
This year.
Oh,
we will have been in our school in just but for COVID-19.
Okay.
Have you recruited the 5,000 for this year?
We're in the process of recruitment. COVID-19 has stopped us from actually announcing, because if you announce, you must muster. And we cannot muster more than 50 people. That's the enabling environment now in Nigeria.
Let's look at the issue of legislation now. I don't know what your act says, but do you have impediments to, efficiency in your mandate and all of that? Because I know that people who go into drug trafficking are stupendously rich. They're among the wealthiest people around. And I don't know just how much the laws of the land, get to, checkmate such people. The fact that we only get to apprehend couriers when the capos are just where they are, and some of them remain untouched.
If you do not get the couriers, you are not likely to get to the main bearers, so to say. Let me mention again that the laws in Nigeria are robust enough for the task that we do. What is difficult for all countries of the world, including America, who have been fighting this for some 90 years. We are just upstarts in this, but it has not relented. The consumption, the trafficking keeps going in spite of the resources that they put into it. But I want to say, we have an opportunity here to use some of the factors that are local to us, that are a little bit different from the West. They might be able to help.
Yeah, and what are those factors?
I like to think that, let's start from the very basic. Parenthood is a full-time job. There are certain cultural ethos that are less legion to us, familiar to us, that have worked for us. But we have suddenly jettisoned all of it like baby with bath water. I don't know why we cannot be our brother's keepers. I don't know why both husband and wife are interested in just making money. I don't know this money to what avail it to help their children. I don't know. By the time they discover, it's too late. We should have, all parents must have an interest in what their children do, because you don't become an addict overnight. There are telltale signs. If you watch closely enough, you would know. There are withdrawal symptoms. They tend to be quiet. They tend to have friends you don't know. They tend to keep late nights, or they tend to be on their own, locking up their rooms. I don't think that parents should allow their children to lock their doors so they can't have access to them, or have friends that they don't know about, or go to places that they don't know what's happening there. We should have more interest. That's the beginning. Then you have the community. Like I said, brothers keepers. It is from the little family groupings that you get to know yourself as a community. Then it's larger society, and then national. We have to start from the beginning.
And the schools too.
The schools, yeah, they fit in. Schools, religious organizations. Well, some of you do remember that it doesn't only in your home that if you are wayward that you be handled. Your teachers are as interested as your parents. I don't know whether we have the teachers with the same kind of mien to do that now.
Well, certainly it can be only the issue of staff strength that NDLEA has as a challenge. And there are issues of finance, for example. Like you mentioned, the legislature, you have not answered that yet. And is there also the issue of organizational logistics?
Let me answer that of the legislature completely now. We are in complete understanding with the National Assembly, both the House and the Senate. And in fact, from When I have taken over command, they have been the vanguard of campaigning for the upliftment of the funds to NDLA. I alluded to the fact that we have an increase in strength, or will have. That is the beginning. NDLA had a deficiency from the beginning. Let me just borrow the parlance, military parlance that I know, to take a look at it properly. You can have troops to task or task to troops at inception. So what you do at inception actually is delineate the tasks before you come to the number of people that you need and who performs what. Added to that, the kind of equipment and logistics they need. NDA was not created like that. That is what the remedial measure Mr. President is trying to do.
How was it created? Let's have a look at that past.
It was troops to task. They were given 5,000 people as total strength. Then they started saying, who does what? That was when they began to discover that they could not do it, because there were so many things that they needed people to do, so many equipment that they didn't provide, so many logistics that they didn't provide.
But at the same time, if I may just take you back to that period, that was the time that we found a lot of, if you like, couriers and even barons being apprehended either at the airports, at borders, and all that. And it became very sensational. It made some sensational news.
Yeah, you call it sensational. It hasn't abated. We do all these arrests, in fact, more than it was before. Our airports are more staffed, more equipped than it were before, and they do a good job. This, unlike before, I may say, are trusted. We have trusted persons at these locations. If you remember, at the seaports, in 2018, it was the deployed personnel there that discovered 800 million pills of tramadol that was destined for consumption in this country.
Let me take you back to the issue of addiction now, which is both health and social problem for us as a country. And it's in view of that, I want us to start from the theme for this year's drug abuse, international drug abuse against illicit trafficking. You know, better knowledge for better care. And it's against that background I want to find out, because I know that the World Health Organization is urging countries to look, the other way, or move away from criminalizing users and adopt, more humane approach in rehabilitating and dealing with, addicts. And I know that there's a drug called Methadone that some countries like India and back in Africa, Kenya, are already piloting. How far has Nigeria gone in this regard, coming from the NDLEA? Because I know you're one of the partners, at the forefront.
Okay. Essentially, NDLEA has two major divisions. You are more familiar with the interdiction bit, which is the search, arrest, seizures, prosecution, and sentencing in courts. The other part, the bigger part of the NDL is actually dedicated to drug demand reduction programs, yes, which has to do with, first of all, you sensitize, you counsel, you rehabilitate, and then finally a bigger one, you have to reintegrate them back into society. Methadone, particularly that you have mentioned, yes, methadone is used specifically for heroin addicts that are recovering. We don't have a serious threat of heroin to that extent, but methadone itself has its own problem, because invariably you reduce one, you stop one, you may be able to stop one addiction, but methadone is also addictive.
So it's not really a solution.
No, it's not really a solution.
No, but the health experts had said that when you administer methadone, it means you're giving an option, and with time, it's taking you away from the initial drug that you were addicted to while you're still on this one. Then it gets to the period where you can equally do your daily activities and live your normal life without taking methadone. With time, it's just about, and your mindset too, because there are so many things that come into play while you're on such therapy.
So that's what they say in theory. I've visited a methadone rehab center in Tanzania. Okay. Recidivism is 70%. And is still on the path of the government, because the methadone is administered and given to them free by government. Methadone is expensive. It's not like Panadol.
So let's go back to at the beginning you mentioned that NDLEA is one agency that has the powers to destroy. So far, because of the number of arrests you have made, give us a sense of the drugs you have destroyed within this period of 2016 to now.
Let me bring the one that is closer to you here that you can live with. In this little FCT, the last time we made a destruction, it was 2018, it was 30 tons. Would you believe 30 tons in FCT alone? We have destroyed 120 in Edo, 105 in Delta, 108 in Lagos. Currently, our stores are full. We're only waiting for the courts to authorize the destruction, because we need to get a certification and authorization by them.
If you say 100 tons, in financial terms, what does that mean?
I hasten to put financial terms to drugs that we seize, because I am more concerned about the lives that we save. So there is no amount of money that you put in terms that will compensate for the loss of one Nigerian child.
Let's
in
look
Vienna, just very quickly, Rabi, in Vienna, early this morning, the 2020 World Drug Report was scheduled to be published. You may have better information whether it did happen, but it was scheduled to be published by 10 a.m. Vienna time, today, 25th of June, 2020. So let's take it that it did happen. What is Nigeria's rating within that 2020 World Drug Report?
I'm not sure that the report was supposed to be published today, but I know there was a debate in the morning for which Nigeria actively contributed. It was to the effect that cannabis be descheduled, removed from the schedule, allowing it for cannabinoid and some other parts of it for medicinal purposes. The selling point, they say, is because the THC, which is the addictive content, is less than 0.2. Actually, they say it's 1.5. And they say that if it's only that, then it means it should be allowed. But the fallacy of that argument is the Single Convention of 1961 that scheduled cannabis did not make any exemption about the THC content that should be considered. Let me graphically illustrate to you. Ordinarily in Nigeria, if you have cough, catarrh or something, we're all familiar with codeine, Benylin. It's very effective medicine. But we all know what has happened. But what is happening is that in one bottle, the effect, the psychoactive effect is little. But if you go 10 times bottles, that means 10 times the effect. That's exactly what has happened to cannabis. If they say it's only 0.2, by the time you take double that or triple that, the effect is in you.
Okay, well, let's look at contemporary times. The global coronavirus pandemic is one that has taken its toll on every aspect of the human endeavor. I want to find out how it has impacted on the operations of the NDLEA, because I know a whole lot of vices are being committed, and most of them under the influence of drugs. So, and I know the entry points. You have the sea ports, you have those coming in by air and the road. What sort of report are you receiving, following the outbreak of coronavirus and the changes it had brought upon so many ways of doing things now?
Let's look at it in context.
Okay.
Whatever operations the NDLEA undertake during this period has to be done under the regime of coronavirus as established by the PTF. The lockdown, the restriction of movement, even the NDLEA was affected. And what that did to us is that two things. We work in concert with the courts, because some of the detainees we had before they could be tried, we had to grant them administrative bail for two reasons. They may be carriers themselves, or otherwise we may be carriers. Either way, we don't want anybody to be affected. So we had to let those people go on administrative bail. Remember, when movements were allowed, there are some checkpoints. If NDLA were to be there, we were more detailed in our search, we would have aggravated the situation of traffic movement. So we didn't do that. But nonetheless, it did not stop us from doing our work. The 3,000 and 2,000 tons I'm talking about, incidentally, 3,000 was in, you know where?
No.
Kogi. And 2,000 in Benue. And it was within this COVID restriction period. Yeah, both of those consignments were destined for Kano. Massively, they didn't get there.
But why Kano? It appears there appears to be a lot of consumption in Kano. Or is it that Kano is also a transit to Niger and other northern African countries?
I won't say it is not a transit point too, but predominantly it's consumption.
Consumption.
And what is NDLA doing? Have you increased your staff strength in Kano, for example? Increase the boots that are on ground, to use your words?
Yes. In relation to what we have, Kano Command is one of the most staffed command for us. The next command that is so staffed is Lagos. We were conscious of the hot points. We tend to put more attention to them. But then again, here's the catch. There is no soft point in Nigeria. There are hardly any little villages that you do not find drugs. That is why President Muhammad Buhari's initiative and style is slightly different. Because he said, in this recruitment, I want you to make deployments up to local government level. Let's start from the local governments, such that we tackle them before they come to state capitals, before they find their way to the airports, trying to leave Nigeria.
Now, let's go back to the World Drug Report, even though you are not too sure if the 2020 report was published early this morning. But let's look at Nigeria's rating generally, maybe in 2019, 2018, with respect to the World Drug Report.
By the time it comes out, we're unlikely to have made any significant change, because it is drugs matters are on the upstage. It's still coming on, just like the war is over. It's very unlikely that a country that was already lowly will emerge all of a sudden to the top position. And it's more difficult to move from top position downwards, because the chain of command, line of communications have not been disrupted. If anything, they are going deeper and be more insidious.
What about the treaties that have been signed between countries in that regard? Why are they not effective?
They are very effective. There are very many mutual legal aids, MLATs we call them, treaties with several countries. That is why if Nigeria is looking for a fugitive that has committed any drug offenses and want them from some of the countries that we have signed, we only need to activate that and they're brought back to us. We have sent back some people to countries where they had committed drug offenses from Nigeria. We still do.
Does Nigeria have a signed treaty between it and, say, Malaysia, China? Because it appears these are the countries.
Those Latin American countries.
At our level, before it gets to that treaties, we have a memorandum of understanding with Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, China, Australia, you name it. But then it's that's the level we can go, so that it helps us in our operations. The two countries, bringing the Justice Ministry and the Foreign Ministry, they have come together and finalize that.
Have you given that suggestion to that regard?
I'm answerable to the Minister of Justice. He is very much aware about the steps that we have taken. So he is working his way up.
These countries you mentioned appear to have very stringent penalties, death sentence and what have you. And Nigeria, we don't have that. Is there any correlation between the severity of the penalty to the reduction or apprehension of traffickers or persons who consume drugs?
Remember, very well, don't forget, lest you forget, I think we started death penalty for drug offenders in Nigeria earlier than most of these countries. Well, but then the laws of the land think otherwise now, that we should no longer have it under our laws. All I can tell you about the death penalty is that you have one more less person that will do drugs after you take him. After you take him out. What you must do is not to get people to start. Once they start, they don't stop.
Because it is lucrative?
One of the
addictive?
Everything, and then make too much money.
Yeah, too much money, and they are usually very powerful.
What we have from some of our collaborators, they are the level of following the money. There is so much money now that they have that they do not know exactly how to move it. So they are advising us to watch out for movements of big monies, so that we allow them so that they put a trace on it.
If there is so much money in it, and with a staff strength of 5,000, certainly it's a Herculean task for your staff and personnel to fight it and fight the traffickers.
That is why it took 27 years until Muhammad Buhari, the president, came to realize that we have been working on that ill-fitting organizations for 27 years.
What sort of synergy or collaboration do you have with, for instance, airline operators, the National Union of Road Transport Workers, the seaport aspect of transiting and all of that? We'd like to know.
Good relationship. If you remember the unfortunate case of Zainab and Kano, it was because of our relationship with the civil airport authorities there that we were able to unravel the matter. The road transport workers, our particular state commands are in touch with their localities. So they know them, they go to them, they give us tips, and we benefit from them. And the luxury transports too, we check them at points of disembarkation and points of start.
Well, the International World Drug International Day for drug abuse, the fight against drug abuse and illicit trafficking. For this year, the theme is better knowledge and better care. How can we achieve this in Nigeria?
She has mentioned one aspect of it. She mentioned one. Methadone. Methadone particularly has some therapeutic effects for heroin consumption. Different drugs have different effects, so require different methods of rehabilitation. So, like I said, in our agency we have a very big component that is tasked with that. Ably trained staff are available, and they know the steps they follow for each of the addiction that is reported to them.
But the United Nations appears to be have a soft spot now for the social media, that is using its various platforms of the social media. Is NDLEA going to toe that line as well?
Yeah, we do have a social media platform that we have free counseling lines that we offer to people who volunteer to talk. Like I have said, let's be very careful about what we import immediately. Let's take a good census of what our capacities and capabilities are. There are things that may work for them there and won't work for us. If we talk about this social media, some of the devices, some of the trade in these drugs are done on the social media. It's easier to obtain this in the West, just on the net.
So let's look at the administration of psychotropic substances in healthcare now. For instance, I know that spinal cord injury victims are usually placed on medications that has cannabis and I think cocaine too, and in this part of the world we seem not to have really gotten deep into it in terms of legalizing. I don't know, is it about the fact that our health personnel have not been adequately trained for that, or what's the missing link?
Okay, let's ask a question before I answer your question.
Okay.
Is it that these things that you're advocating have no substitutes?
That's for
the ones that you're advocating we should pick up. Are they the only ones available? First of all, Nigerians' attitude is, okay, if there is a substitute to methadone, let's look for it. If there is a substitute for heroin, I know that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Let's look for a substitute, because morphine comes from heroin.
Yeah, morphine.
All right. So when people are saying, let's go apply therapeutic means with the same sources of addiction in the name of alleviating pains, we have our reservation. There is always an alternative. Let the alternative not be a dependent causing element. We are not about to open the floodgate to the use of medicines in name of therapeutic uses. I ask in painkillers, and Nigeria made the point at the UN. You said there must be painkillers available for cancer patients and for after surgery patients. I said, okay, that was the year we seized 800 million pills. I said, look, this is what we have in Nigeria. When we talk, you said painkillers must be made available. Now we have a population of about 170 million Nigerians. I asked, how many more pills do we need to address our cancer patients and painkillers?
And how many cancer patients do we have?
That is the starting point. Let's identify the cancer patients. Then, with controlled delivery through the pharmaceutical chain, that can be addressed. But we shouldn't just agree that some cancer patient is somewhere that we don't know, he requires this cancer alleviating painkiller.
So that harmony needs to be struck between the healthcare workers or those who administer visitors, because Nigeria has a huge cancer burden, and the use of morphine as palliative in care, to relieve the pains that people go through is something that is missing. So are you saying that the missing link is, getting a data that shows the number of patients requiring such treatment? Is that your argument?
Well, I believe that the government should be interested in the number of patients. Now you have just made a general statement that we have a lot of cancer patients.
It's a huge burden. Nigeria has
it's a huge burden. It's not from there, many of them.
It's high.
No, we don't know.
It's
when
high.
we use the
statistics are there.
No, but I've just told you we are 200 million people in Nigeria. So tell me, how many million cancer patients do we have? It is on that basis that the government can make provision for the availability of these painkillers for them. We don't just open our floodgates. Let me tell you, tramadol is actually medicine used for pain killing. And the medical dosages available and allowed the world over is 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams. In Nigeria, we seize between 200 and 500 milligrams. What pain are we trying to alleviate?
Now, let's go back to the theme of the 2020 International Drug Fight Against Drug, the better knowledge and better care. Let's look at this and get your thoughts at the individual level, at the non-profit organizations level, at the private sector level. Let's start with the individual. What are your thoughts with respect to individual? What would the NDLEA be telling an average individual Nigerian? And then what will NDLEA look forward to in terms of support, in terms of collaboration with non-profit organizations and the private sector? Let's start with the individual.
With the individual, at least you give it to NDLEA for once. Nigerians can no longer pretend that there is no drug abuse problem in the country. Hitherto, we have been trying to mask it, but everybody knows somebody whose child or who is hooked on drugs. But we seem to have been thinking that somehow it will go away. It had to take the NDLEA stand that, look, there is a problem, let's all rally together. And I hope that we will never go back to this era of trying to wish that something, drug abuse will cease by itself. Every collaborator is welcome. In fact, I made the point, Nigeria was like a country. Okay, Nigeria is a country. The analogy I'd like to draw, here you were, your house was on fire. Yet you rely on your neighbors to come and put out the fire, even though you know those neighbors' houses are also on fire. That was the way we were before. Everybody in Nigeria, all the components parts of Nigeria knew this. This civic responsibility that behoves everyone to come aboard. Government alone cannot do it. In fact, Mr. President has made the point, saying we as a national government, have the enabling law, the NDLEA Act, but the citizens themselves are local. Before they come into the city to reach where the city of federal government is, they to get to the states and local
Will the
government.
NDLEA think of organizing citizen engagements, for example?
We are always ready and willing. But as you understand, you don't come cheap. You are the platform for galvanizing that. But if you assure me, when I arrange it, I'll come and pay nothing, I will do that.
Certainly, NTA is in the forefront of such collaboration. That's why you're here. Now, let's look at the non-profit organizations, because I want us to take them one by one. What will you expect the non-profit organizations to do to support NDLEA in its efforts?
I would like for the vetted NGOs, vetted by the NSA, having come through the mill.
Who is NSA?
National Security Advisor. On our own, we don't just accept any NGO. The NSA will have to clear that they are up to no duties or jobs that are inimical to Nigeria. If they come, we will have the clear mandate to work with them. If you recall what is happening in Maiduguri now, only God knows the number of NGOs that are there. Many of them against Nigeria.
You're talking of the fight against insurgency and Boko Haram.
Yeah. Apart from what we are talking about insurgency, at every camp that the military had overrun in fighting Boko Haram, they had made drug paraphernalia, particularly tramadol.
Now, what of the private sector?
The private sectors, they know what they're supposed to do. They have been doing it to other agencies. Why they choose to alienate and segregate NDLEA is their own reason. I don't know.
Talking about the private sector.
Have you made efforts to get at them?
I know. I'm talking about private sectors. Yes, I've approached many of them. And I see them everywhere, year in, year out, giving out vehicles to other organizations, but not NDLEA.
Maybe NDLEA did not show them that they require them. Did do it. For example, the Nigerian police force is always at the receiving such donations.
Before they got the vehicle from the source, personally spoke to him, dedicated a staff from his office and me from my office, and nothing came out of it.
What's your take on the celebrities who are supposed to be role models, but they seem to be at the forefront of promoting drug abuse and drug use?
I disagree with that completely. They shouldn't be doing so. That is why we are very cautious about celebrities that we endorse as our ambassadors. Since we've been here 5 years, I've endorsed, I think, only one young lady who is virtually an orphan, who has found her way to be in school in Unilag, and she does music. And she is clean, we have tested.
Well, there appears to be the need for mobilizing political will. What is NDLEA doing to achieve mobilization and to also, if you like, mobilize more resources? Because it appears you can't just depend on government resources alone.
Mobilization has already begun from the highest level, from the president himself. And I have acknowledged here publicly, members of the National Assembly are in total support of anything we can do to rid Nigerians of drug abuse. I'd like to give the Kano example. That is where you meet a total commitment by the whole community. Everybody is on board in Kano, regardless of the fact that it appears to be unabated up to now, but everybody is in Kano. The traditional rulers, the elites, the businessmen, what you have teachers, everybody is in concert.
Will you advocate the burning of codeine?
No, codeine is medicinal. It should be prescribed.
But not abused.
But it has been abused now.
Yeah.
That is why when we get them in transit without proper prescription, we confiscate them.
Let's look at the issue of discipline now in your workforce. Discipline, and we know that this administration is paying so much attention to fighting corruption, and a lot has been said about men of the NDLEA themselves who are users, drug users. So how do you reconcile one that is supposed to, be at at the forefront of checkmating this, being a user himself? What do you do to? I'm sure you must have had reports about such stuff. What did you do, or what do you normally do to such people?
And related to that, the issue of destruction of specimens.
Yes.
Unfortunately, members of the NDLEA did not descend from heaven. We are part of the general malaise that is bedeviling the country. But that is not to say that we condone any indiscipline concerning the tampering of exhibit or consumption. Not only members of the NDLEA, but even all military and paramilitary authorities. We apply the same rules to everybody. The full law is what we apply. No more, no less.
If you are to give us a sense of what you have done in, from 2016 to date, how many of your personnel have you apprehended that are responsible for what Rabi was alluding to, and what have you done to them in terms of
I have 4 persons,
discipline?
4 or 5 persons undergoing the procedure for dismissal for exhibit tampering.
5 persons?
Yes.
Out of 5,000 people?
No, but they're not all keeping, they are not all exhibit keepers.
Oh.
Exhibit keepers are a special set of people that are dedicated to only keeping exhibit. Keep it in check. When it's going to court, you take it. When it's from court, you bring it back. Those ones are not a lot. I think we have under 50 of them in the country.
Well, as we round off the program, let's quickly go back to the issue of increasing the capacity of your staff. You have been given the presidential mandate to increase from 5,000. You say
15,000 more.
You have 15,000 more.
Sorry, we'll get to 20.
To get to 20,000. Tell us and tell the public the criteria that you require, if you like, the requirements. Is it just first degree or what? Or what disciplines specifically do you look for? Must they be sociologists, psychologists, or what?
For recruitment.
Yes.
Okay, there are 2 categories. One of the categories is further broken into 2 other ones. First of all, we have the graduates and the non-graduates. The non-graduates, of course, will form the bulk of the working men. The graduates generally all start at the same level. But then we have the lawyers and the doctors on a slightly higher level, as like it's in all federal institutions. Because we need lawyers, because we prosecute all of our cases. We don't farm them out to anybody. And our lawyers are about the best. We have more than 98% success rate. Where we don't succeed, it's only because of
technicalities.
So you say. And I like to point out that I think we're on the right path. Now that we have the main personnel augmented, for every personnel there is a corresponding logistics and equipment that he desires. That is the next step, and I'm sure Mr. President is already averting his mind to that.
Would you say the way you destroy seized or what do you call it?
Narcotics.
Yes, according to best practices?
No, they're not.
So?
About an incinerator costs about $400,000. We're hard pressed to buy a vehicle for a patrol. We can ill afford $400,000 to buy incinerator.
How many incinerators do you have right now?
There are mobile ones. We don't have incinerators right now. No, we make, we build them ourselves and destroy them after that. That's all.
So,
but the ones that fit best practice, good for ecology, are sold very exorbitantly. But we have made a case for the purchase of at least 6 for the 6 zones.
Colonel Muhammad Mustafa Abdallah, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer, National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. It's been nice talking to you on this as we observe the 26th of June, which is the annual United Nations International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. Thank you so much for giving us insights into the efforts the NDLEA is making.
Thank you for having me.
Rabi Abdallah, as usual, thank you so much for your knowledge of the subject matter, and
It's my
thank
pleasure.
you for this support. In the last 15
Thank
minutes,
you.
we've been talking with Colonel Muhammad Mustafa Abdullah, Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA. He's told us the efforts the NDLEA is making to bring about, or rather, eliminate the processing, the trafficking, and several other abuses of drugs and illicit narcotics. He said NDLEA is on the verge of increasing its staff strength from the present 5,000 to 20,000. In fact, they've gotten a presidential mandate to do just that. That's Platform. Thank you for watching. I'm Muhammad Kuda Abubakar. Bye for now.